Change Lives for Good with your host, Greg Kepferle.
There's no place like home, and yet on any given night in Silicon Valley, 7,500 people are homeless. At the same time, it takes at least 3 workers working full-time at minimum wage to afford a median-priced apartment in Silicon Valley. And over 18% of the population is living below poverty. How can we end homelessness? How can we get more affordable housing right here in Santa Clara County? Hello and welcome to Change Lives for Good. My name is Greg Kepferle. I'm the CEO of Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County, and I'm your host in this conversation with change makers who are working to fight poverty in Santa Clara County. With me today to discuss the issue of homelessness and affordable housing are Jennifer Loving of Destination Home and Kevin Zwick of the Housing Trust Silicon Valley. So first I'd like to welcome Jennifer and Kevin. Welcome.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks for having us.
So Jennifer, can you tell us a little bit about Destination Home and what you're doing to end homelessness in Silicon Valley?
Sure. You know, it's such a perfect storm here in the Silicon Valley because it's really a tale of two cities. We have such wealth and innovation, and then we have pockets of such deep homelessness. We have the 3rd highest chronically homeless population in the nation, second only to New York and LA. We have the 7th largest homeless population in America. So those numbers I think are surprising to people. And for a long time, I think across America, we didn't necessarily have strategies to systematically reduce homelessness. We had a lot of activities that helped folks. There were shelters and places for people to eat and get clothes, and there wasn't necessarily a real push to put apartment keys into the hands of people that have been outside for a really long time. So Destination Home's role in the Silicon Valley is to serve as a convener where we bring public and private partners together to leverage resources, increase the available number of units for folks that have been marginalized for decades, and really work together to try to systematically reduce our homeless population.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it's a huge challenge that you got in front of you, but it's terrific to have somebody like you leading the charge. So thanks for being with us today, Jennifer. And Kevin, the Housing Trust Silicon Valley, you're in a sense at the other end of the spectrum of getting more affordable housing available. So what does the Housing Trust do?
Well, the Housing Trust Silicon Valley, we're a nonprofit loan fund. We were started in 2000 by a coalition of homeless advocates, affordable housing advocates, the County Board of Supervisors, and the business community, which makes our housing trust pretty unique versus other housing trusts around the country, where primarily the role of providing affordable housing and providing the funding for affordable housing lies primarily in the government sector. Here in Silicon Valley, our CEOs and our employers, they've always identified that the lack of affordable housing is a key challenge to having a successful valley and having successful businesses. They know that they can't attract talent and keep talent here when nobody can afford, other than the highest compensated, to live here. And they're not just thinking about their own employees, they're thinking about their employees, teachers and the policemen and the firemen, and quite frankly, the people that serve them coffee and work in the restaurants and work around their houses as well. So we have a very enlightened business community in Silicon Valley, and they've always been behind the Housing Trust and affordable housing.
So it seems like both of you are working in public-private partnerships. I mean, this seems a creative edge of finding ways to address homelessness and the affordable housing crisis. And yet the need is so huge and the issue is so daunting. What is it that you're doing that's really innovative, that's cutting edge, that is really changing the game around fighting homelessness? What's different about what you're doing?
I think one of the things that's different is that we've created a community campaign that everyone involved in homelessness traditionally is involved in, but the difference is that we're making units available. We're putting homeless folks that have been outside for decades into those units, and our CBO partners, all of these excellent nonprofit partners that do this work every day, are making sure that people keep their housing. And I think it's a different type of effort when it's truly working across agencies, not necessarily targeting who comes to your door, but who's the most vulnerable and needed of housing, and measuring it all based on how well folks stay housed.
So this is the Housing 1000 strategy. So maybe talk a little bit more about Housing 1000. What your specific strategy there is with the community-based organizations.
From Destination Homes perspective, the goal is to create as many new resources as possible for homeless individuals and families. And so our role is really to work with our system partners, housing authorities, city government, county governments, philanthropy, to increase resources, whether it's money, housing units, creating housing, that sort of thing that is available, because there is, we're tens of thousands of units short for what we need in our community to address our affordable housing crisis. And generally the people that are most marginalized, the people that are disabled and sick and have been outside for a long time, our veterans that are outside since Vietnam, are not able to access units in a traditional way. So we've been really pioneering the Housing First model. And so we collectively fund nonprofits to access those resources and target long-term homeless folks for that housing.
So this is a population that needs a lot of services, a lot of resources, a lot of attention to be able to get back on their feet and to make ends meet. And at the same time, thinking, Kevin, with the housing trust, with affordable housing, the developers are looking at projects that can pencil out, that, can they actually, break even, make a profit even, and so, why would they be concerned about people that, can't pay, market rate rent, and even more so, why would they even be concerned about people that are homeless and can't pay rent at all?
Well, I think there's a couple ways to look at that question, and one thing that's happening right now is cities all across, not just Silicon Valley, but around the Bay Area, are trying to find that connection around when you build more market rate housing and luxury housing, does that create a need for more affordable housing? And what every city who's doing this study is finding out is that yes, absolutely indeed, when you are building new market rate housing, whether or not that's a new condominium in a high rise or new apartments that are for rent, these apartments that are newly for rent in Mountain View go for almost $5,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment. These new households coming to the cities are creating the need for more low-wage jobs, which in turn creates a need for more affordable housing. So, housing advocates and cities all around the Bay Area are looking to say, well, what can we do if we know that this new market rate housing, while providing homes for people, giving people options that are middle income, giving them great options that are near transit, good infill development, it's also creating this affordable housing need. How can we get this market rate development to help pay for some of the affordable housing, new affordable housing need that it's creating? And that's something that all cities are looking at. It's especially timely in light of the fact that cities lost their greatest tool for funding affordable housing, the loss of redevelopment agencies. People are looking and saying, well, this makes a lot of sense to look at the new market rate housing, the new luxury housing being built, and using that as a way to fund some of the affordable housing need that it's creating.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned with the loss of redevelopment funds, I mean, we're in the situation right now where we've got fewer government resources, you've got the loss of redevelopment funds at the state level, we've got the sequester that's hit us from the federal level that's affecting Section 8 vouchers for low income and homeless individuals. And then, we had the government shut down and just the general crisis in Washington. And it seems like people are abandoning the poor. The people are saying, oh, the homeless, you have to fend for yourselves. And as nonprofits, we're trying to say, wait a minute, this is not the way we want to live as a community. So what are some of the policy strategies and the advocacy stances that both of you are taking and your organization's taking to try to change this reality of the loss of government funding and this crisis of homelessness and affordable housing?
Well, I think you're right. I think that I think it's very disappointing seeing the decisions that are being made at a federal level. And historically, for a very long time, we get the lowest federal investment of HUD dollars of all 9 Bay Area counties, and we have the highest chronically homeless population. So there's a disproportionate investment that's been happening for a long time. Along with that, sequestration has created more pressure on the housing market, has put more people into really dire straits. I think from that perspective, it's been very disappointing. I think what has been exciting is to see the responsibility that's being taken on a local level. And one of the things that has happened recently that is really worth talking about is Measure A, the tax measure that happened last year with the 0.1% tax increase. The County of Santa Clara last week voted to put $4 million a year for the next 10 years into a permanent supportive housing fund. And so that's really a large, flexible source of money that we can use to really supplant what's not happening at a federal level.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's terrific. I'm really glad that the voters voted for Measure A and that the supervisors are supporting affordable housing and finding solutions to homelessness. What about the housing development side of the equation?
Well, I think people are looking a lot to see how do we rebuild the funding environment that we need to create affordable housing. Affordable housing means a lot of things to a lot of different people. At its essence is somebody living in housing and have enough to pay their rent or their mortgage and also pay for their food, transportation, and maybe save a little bit of money. But a lot of times when people talk about affordable housing, they're talking about a very specific type of housing that's subsidized for lower income, lower wage workers. And that type of housing is the most critical, and it requires several partners. It requires the local government putting in some seed money. It requires the state government from putting in some of their money, some money from the federal government through tax credits, and then usually a bank has to provide a loan. And you have to have all four of those things happening in order to create the environment to build housing. At the state level, we're really excited around a bill called SB 391, the California Homes and Jobs Act. This bill will create a permanent source of affordable housing funding. It'll be about $700 million a year, which will go to start to put back what was lost when redevelopment was eliminated by the legislature a couple years ago, which actually eliminated $1 billion of affordable housing funding annually. So SB 391, we're hopeful that it'll get passed by the legislature in 2014, and that'll create a nice permanent source of funding at the state level for affordable housing.
So it seems like the one thing that you would like people to advocate for is that passage of the state legislation that you said. And what's the number of the bill again?
It's SB 391. It's the California Homes and Jobs Act.
California Homes and Jobs Act, SB 391. Okay,
SB 391.
so we need to get our state legislators on that and supporting that.
Yeah, and it passed the state Senate, and it now just needs to pass out of the state assembly, and we have great assembly members in Silicon Valley who have always supported affordable housing, and here's what they can do to help champion that and get that past the last mile out of the assembly and then signed by this governor.
That's terrific. And in terms of destination home, are there specific policy issues that you're looking at that you're looking for the community to take action on?
Well, I think that we're still working on advocating for a change in our federal allocation. That path is really unclear. We've been told no, and so our work is really figuring out whether it's through Congress or how to really make the case that we're a priority community in the nation. You know, I think for a long time we have not been seen as a priority community, and that whole time our numbers have continued to go up. I think at a local level is really working with our local government when we're creating new affordable units. We need to have policies that screen in homeless folks so that they're not screened out automatically, so that we're able to set aside units that meet the income needs of the most vulnerable homeless people in our community, and that we have a way to actually get them into those units.
Right. It seems like on the federal side, with the new Commerce Department supplemental poverty measure that the University of Stanford has been studying, they're showing that the urban counties actually have a higher poverty rate than other counties. So because we're such a high cost county, the reality is that poverty is a lot higher here, which means that the needs are much greater. I mean, the cost of apartments are a lot higher. Even though wages may be on average higher, it's still not enough to make ends meet. So I think if we can take that advocacy position at the federal level, I think there's a chance that hopefully maybe we can push for waivers for Santa Clara County. That'd be one thing that I would look at. So we'll come back to our conversation in a few minutes, but we're working on this whole issue of homelessness and affordable housing and finding the innovative policy solutions to this. So I just want to say thank you for being here, and we'll rejoin our conversation in a couple of minutes. Thank you very much, and this is your host, Greg Kepferle.
NBC Bay Area News starts now.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Diane Dwyer.
And I'm Janelle Wang. Raj and Jessica are off tonight. The Silicon Valley remains one of the most affluent regions in the country. IPOs, CEOs making millions. But there is a darker side to this prosperity. New numbers out this week show the area and the state as a whole is still struggling. NBC Bay Area's Damian Trujillo is live in downtown San Jose with a look at the faces of homelessness and poverty. Damian.
Well, you don't have to walk very far to feel the pulse on what's actually happening here on the streets of the Silicon Valley. As you mentioned, it involves poverty and people struggling to keep their homes.
Anthony Martinez is becoming a fixture, and not by choice.
Every day we live on the street and nowhere to go, and hard to shower and hard to clean ourselves up.
New numbers by the San Jose nonprofit called My Project Youth Connect shows students are increasingly joining the homeless community. More than 1,600 kids in Santa Clara County alone.
I see them in tents, and I see them in cars, and I see them everywhere.
And the Silicon Valley troubles continue. This home is what helped make California #1 in the nation in June. Last month, the state had the most foreclosure filings, topping Arizona and Nevada.
It's rough out here, sir.
Rough in a valley with so many riches, yet a big part of it is still in the woods.
The federal government recently convened a meeting here in San Jose to address student homelessness. They say they'll be back to see how they can collaboratively fix that problem. We're live in downtown San Jose. I'm Damian Trujillo, NBC Bay Area News.
Welcome back to Change Lives for Good. This is your host, Greg Kepferle, CEO of Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County. And with me are Jennifer Loving, Executive Director of Destination Home, and Kevin Zwick, CEO of the Housing Trust Silicon Valley. We're discussing the challenge of affordable housing and the incredible challenge of how do we address the crisis of homelessness in the Valley. Jennifer and Kevin, the reality is we've been talking here about homelessness and affordable housing, and the reality is that we've got a crisis on our hands. Right now, outside on the streets, we have so many families and individuals, children that are homeless, living under bridges, taking the bus 22, riding that all night. We are in Silicon Valley, one of the richest places in the world, and yet we've got a crisis of homelessness on our hands. What in the world are we doing about it as a community? What are you doing about it, Jennifer? What are you doing about it, Kevin? And what do we need the community to do? This is a crisis.
It is, and it's, I think that we've been beating the drum saying, and this is not tolerable in our community. This should no longer be tolerable in our community. We have encampments, 200 encampments in San Jose alone. We have thousands of people that live in them. They are living in these encampments. They are dying in these encampments. People are being assaulted. People are sick. People are dying from diseases that could be prevented, and it's just below the surface. I mean, it's in the shadow of these tech companies, and this has been a persistent problem that has been growing year after year. And I really feel like we're reaching a point of how far do we go before it's too late to go back. And that's why it's so important to collectively prioritize housing. Housing is the only solution to homelessness. There is no other solution. It depends on the type and how long folks need subsidized housing, but there's nothing else that really resolves homelessness, and it's going to require all of us to get that done.
So how are we going to get more affordable housing built? I see every day in East San Jose, I pass the homes of the clients at Catholic Charities. And I may pass a bungalow that has 4 or 5 cars in the driveway. Well, that tells me that there are 4 or 5 families living at that house. And how is a child able to learn in school when he has or she has no place to study? The whole family is living in the living room, another family is in the bedroom, a third family is in the dining room. I mean, this is just intolerable. How can we build more affordable housing?
Well, I mean, I think you've hit on it, because people ask me, so how are people getting by in Silicon Valley if they can't afford the new $5,000 apartments, $3,000 apartments? And it's just that. People are getting by living in unsafe living conditions. People are overcrowding, or they're stretching their budget to the limit where there's nothing left in case they have a challenge in their life. More than 2/3 of low-income families who are renters pay more than half of their income to rent, which means they don't have enough money then to save, to buy the food that they need, buy the books and clothes for their kids, pay for their health care, or be in any position to weather any sort of challenge. And the story of Silicon Valley ends badly if we don't solve this. And it's not an easy solution. I mean, the Association of Bay Area Governments say that we need 16,000 more affordable rental units for very low-income families over the next 8 years. With the money that we have today, after the loss of redevelopment and after the cuts to federal programs, we have enough money to build 400 units a year. Wow. So we have a deficit of 13,000 units. This isn't a small problem to solve. It's a big problem to solve, and we really need to see the community and policymakers step up to the plate and be ready to engage in solving a big issue, a $100 million issue. And that's what it's going to take to have enough housing for everyone in our community. We do a great job of building housing for those who can afford to have lots of options. We don't do a good job in building housing for people who don't have a lot of options.
Right. So it's a big issue, it's a big challenge, and the corporations and government needs to step up, as well as the community as a whole. But it seems like the private sector has an opportunity here with this new model of social impact financing. I know the affordable housing community for years has been relying on affordable housing tax credits, which is a great way for private investors actually to make money on building affordable housing. And we're working with Santa Clara County on this new innovative social impact financing, where the county is looking at chronic homelessness and mental health issues as two potential areas for pay for success social impact financing that Catholic Charities and Step Up Silicon Valley have initiated, and we've got some support from many partners in the community. And I'm wondering, Jennifer, how you see that as a potential for helping end homelessness.
You know, I think it's a different opportunity to invest in solutions. You know, I think that homelessness has been problematic for people to get their arms around because there doesn't seem like there's an end. It seems like, well, it's a charity model, not necessarily as exciting as, you know, water in Africa or other things that is creating some sort of social impact. But what we don't understand is that not ending homelessness costs our community and is a higher tax burden, right, than resolving it. And social impact financing, I think, can provide a different sort of vehicle for investing in the same sort of solutions. I mean, again, it comes down to housing. Now, there's all kinds of types of housing that we can develop or build or leverage or acquire, but there isn't a magic bullet. It's whether or not we want to have a community that works for everyone that lives here, or if we don't. And I don't really think we only want a community that works only for people who can truly afford to be here, because then there will be no one else doing the rest of the things that makes our community work.
Right. What sort of community do we want to live in? So real quickly, Kevin, what's motivated you to get in this? Why are you jousting at the windmill of affordable housing?
It just comes from a place that we live in, not just such a rich community and region, but a rich country, and it just doesn't seem inherently fair that people can't have a basic place to live that's according to their need. And you know, that's something that's always struck me. And locally, I mean, something that just really drives me is what's happening in the city of Palo Alto, where a bunch of poor people have been living in mobile homes forever, and that's the only way they get to stay in Palo Alto. And you know, there's efforts to convert that into new luxury housing, and that just seems wrong to me.
It's wrong. It's not fair. Jennifer, real quickly, what motivates you?
This is a politically powerless class in our society that we have ignored and often criminalized, and I don't think there's any greater work that can be done domestically than trying to right the balance of that.
Right. It's absolutely critical that we find the solution to affordable housing and ending homelessness. I'm your host, Greg Kepferle. Change lives for good. Until next time, remember to reach out, speak up, and change lives for good.